Hello and welcome to the second video in this series on tense and aspect in English. In this video, I will explain to you how to identify the best cues to use the past simple. So first, let's have a look at some examples of sentences in the past simple. "That is true," replied Catherine. He laughed incredulously. Forrest smiled in approval. "Youth is the best time," Frank said quietly after a while. As you can see again here, highlighted in blue and italics, are the actual verbs in the sentence. I mentioned in the first video that reply or replied is a very common verb in the past simple. There are also other verbs which are somewhat similar to reply that you can find in the past simple very often, which means that if you spot these verbs, chances are they will be in the past simple. And in order to explore this a bit further, I suggest that we do another exercise like we did earlier. So have a look at these 5 sentences and please grab your very advanced pen and paper and draw a table with 2 columns and sort these sentences into 2 groups. First, "Youth is the best time," Frank said quietly after a while. He laughed incredulously. "That is true," replied Catherine. "I can tell you now, I have it all in my head," she answered unexpectedly. Forrest smiled in approval. I now suggest that you pause the video and sort these sentences into 2 groups. Alright, all done. Let's see what we get. For the first group, I identified 3 sentences that work together. So the sentences contain the verbs said, replied, and answered. I felt like they had something in common, which I will explain in a minute. In the second group, I put "he laughed incredulously" and Forrest smiled in approval. The reason I put these 2 sentences together and the other 3 sentences in a different group is that the first 3 verbs, said, replied, and answered, are what we call verbs of reported speech, whereas the verbs laugh and smile are actually verbs of reaction. So I've separated these verbs into these 2 groups, which are the 2 most frequent types of verbs that are found in the past simple. So say you want to talk about what someone said or how someone reacted, then you will use the past simple with some of these verbs. Let's do the same exercise, and this time we use the 2 categories, verbs of reported speech and verbs of reaction. And we have 6 new sentences. "Please do not tell on me," she whispered. He nodded thoughtfully, his eyes never leaving her face. He glanced briefly at her bemused face and shrugged. She accepted the glass and muttered a word of thanks. "Yeah, sure," Glenn muttered uncertainly. "They are horrible," she announced. Alright, so now please pause the video and do this exercise. Okie dokie. Let's see what we have in these 2 categories. In verbs of reported speech, I have "she whispered" or "she accepted the glass and muttered a word of thanks." Glenn muttered uncertainly and she announced. You may notice here that in the second sentence, "she accepted the glass and muttered a word of thanks." We do not have actual speech in the sentence, so you don't have the inverted commas or anything like that. But still, mutter in this context is a verb of reported speech. In the verbs of reaction category, I have "he nodded thoughtfully, his eyes never leaving his face," and "he glanced briefly at her and at her amused face and shrugged." These 2 verbs show typical reactions and are usually found in the past simple. Let's have a look at more examples of verbs of reported speech in the past simple. "Not if I can help it," he replied grimly. "Apparently not," she whispered as her eyes filled with singing tears. "She does come from Croydon," said my mother. "I don't know," he muttered. And finally, he announced that another referendum would be held in January. "I know when someone is lying to me," she added with a thin smile. And examples of verbs of reaction. I dropped my eyes and nodded sheepishly. He smiled warmly. Sam shrugged at me. Blanche smiled to herself as she realized that he was unaware of the irony. Now that we've identified the best cues for the past simple and the present simple, let's have a quick look at the difference between these two tenses. And in order to do this, you can do the next exercise, which is a fill in the blanks exercise. And I've prepared this exercise on the platform online, so you just need to follow the link to this exercise. You will see that in this exercise, you will be given a number of verb forms and asked to choose the one that fits best with the context. You may find that several forms fit the same context. If that happens, have a think about how this may affect the meaning of the sentence. So follow the link from the website and good luck.